But I looked earlier about the same amount. Okay, so I have I'm sick. Anywhere that I go, I feast to yourself. I was like, I appreciate you.
It seems like I was like, that's like on the opposite side of the it was Friday things and whatever else.
You know, like it's just kind of what I did see that.
Yeah, we kind of never
I'm like, last 10 days over that number. Where's that?
All right, well, you don't.
I know.
I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Lowell Board of Education, February 10th, 2025 at 7 o'clock. Would you all please rise for this and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business, are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
None tonight.
Okay, any public comments on the agenda?
We do have one tonight.
Okay,
Stephanie Boone.
Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Boone. I live at 2205 Lowell Drive. And the first thing I wanted to talk about quickly was the agenda item. Looks like you're set to take a vote on adopting some new curriculum for the ELA. And it's through McGraw-Hill open court reading. And I just want to make sure that you are all aware before you vote to spend nearly $500,000 on this. That given President Trump's recent order related to the ending of divisive and wasteful DEI programs and government programs that take federal funding, this is definitely some thin ice that we're treading on if you go to this website and you see McGraw-Hill's very clear agenda in the first few pages here that I gave you. DEI is all over the place, and they can put what they want on their website, that's fine. But my concern is that it talks about specifically DEI, the McGraw-Hill DEI content team collaborates and partners on how, where, and why DEI is reflected in the content we develop and deliver. They say it's not just a box for us to check off, it's a commitment that is demonstrated every day through our actions as leaders and employees. So you can bet that it's going to be littered throughout the curriculum. So I just want to make sure before you vote on that you clearly think about, do you want to waste almost $500,000 on curriculum that is littered with DEI? So I'm just asking you to think about that. On the fourth page, there's a quick blurb about the January 24th statement from President Trump and the U.S. Department of Education ending Biden's book ban. Hoax. The Office of Civil Rights has rescinded all department guidance issued under the theory that a school district's removal of age-inappropriate books from its libraries may violate civil rights laws. So gone are the days that you need to worry about hurting someone's feelings because you remove a book that has age-inappropriate, sexually explicit material. And on the very back of the packet, I have another book that I found. I told you I was committed to showing these to you. It is a very sexually explicit book that involves adult material, and it's available to minors in our schools. There are some quotes in there, in the pages there that you might want to look at that definitely are considered adult material. On October 14, 2024, I became aware of the LAS Gender Support Plan, which Mr. Fowler confirmed was being used in our schools. That's on the next packet I gave you. It would appear that the plan allows for biological boys or men to use restrooms labeled for girls or women and vice versa. My previous requests for more detailed information have been ignored. I'm here tonight to seek immediate clarification of this matter, because if this is still the current policy, it's a violation of federal Title IX laws and President Trump's recent executive order on February 4th. Your policies and protocols need to be rescinded now, and I'm asking for a response tonight publicly on this. Otherwise, within 24 hours in writing, lack of response will trigger a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. Thank you.
Student council report.
Good evening, everybody. Up at the high school, the Winterfest dance occurred on February 1st. While this dance tends to have a bit lower attendance than our other two dances, for those who did go, the dance was a night of dancing and fun. Another exciting event at the high school was the unified basketball game. The Link students played great, and select classes were able to go down to the gym and cheer on the Arrows. This week, the student leadership class is putting on Be Nice Week, a chance for students to show off their kindness and build up school spirit with spirit days and a few Valentine's activities. The second trimester is also coming to a close. Teachers are starting to work out how the units will wrap up, and students are starting to feel the pressure of exams looming once again. This has been your student report for February 10th, 2025. Your student representative, Connor Cazares.
Thanks, Connor. Next on the agenda is a consent grouping. I need a motion to adopt the consent grouping, and then we will discuss it and vote on it. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Okay, moved by Jen. So I have support? Okay, support by Jessica. That the Board of Education approve the consent grouping part of the agenda as recommended. Okay, discussion.
Yeah, so this is the regular business of the board with approval of previous meeting minutes, payment of bills. We have an overnight student trip. Our girls soccer team does an overnight team building trip in March. Then the Schools of Choice resolution. This is an annual piece by the board. What this resolution does is it opts us out of the state program for in-county schools of choice because it opts us into the Kent ISD schools of choice rules that we have been, even before Section 105 for schools of choice. It also opts us into Section 105C for out-of-county residents to participate in our programs through schools of choice. So it's an annual thing that we do. We've done it since schools of choice rules came to be in Michigan.
Any other comments or discussion on this? All right, then, I will entertain a vote to accept the consent grouping. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on our list is the report from Murray Lake. Holly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Molly Burnett, I'm the principal at Murray Lake. And I brought with me my fantastic third grade group of teachers. We have Catherine Wells, Shelley Sieberts, and Olivia Lipsky. And so we're here to talk to you about Win Time, which is something new that they're trying this year. So what is Win Time? Win Time is just a dedicated period of time within the school day where students receive targeted instruction based on their individual needs. It's intended to provide differentiation to students to either catch them up in areas that they struggle or to extend their learning in areas that they excel. Teachers differentiate every day, so this isn't like anything new. However, when you have a classroom full of 25 students that are at 25 different levels, it makes it really difficult to hit them all exactly where they're at. So that's kind of where Win Time comes from. And we're starting small this year. This is something that they're doing as a team. Nobody else is doing it yet, but it's something that we've always wanted to do. We've just had a few barriers in order to make this happen. One of the barriers is the teachers' schedules aren't all consistent, so they don't have consistent groups of time where they can do these things. But third grade has figured out how to do it. And also another barrier was time, but it's no longer a barrier anymore because we have our dedicated PLC time. And I think without that PLC time, and we'll get into that a little bit, they wouldn't have been able to make this happen because it takes a lot of teaching, looking at data consistently every day so they can make groups and form kids into these fluid groups. So we're very grateful for that time, and I think because of that, this was initiated. We're starting really small right now with just math, just because we wanted to build that toolbox and do it right, and then hopefully we'll extend it to other subject areas. But we'll get into it a little bit, and I'll have them all kind of explain what they do, because they are the experts at this.
So most of you know what PLT time is for. It's twice a month where we meet before school, and we've been using a majority of our time to plan for our what I need win times. So we plan the pacing of our math units. I'm on the math curriculum team as well, so that helps with the planning. But we look at the data from our exit tickets, which is in the curriculum that we've adopted 2 years ago. We'll use those exit tickets after 1 to 3 lessons, and then we will meet together to discuss what kind of areas of need we have. So maybe some kids are needing extension and some kids are needing reteaching, or they're right in the middle, those bubble kids. So we then decide what types of groups we need. So we'll look at those exit tickets, then we'll plan different activities. Some of it is just from the curriculum, those extension activities, or reteach, or things we've designed ourselves. And then we'll discuss student progress then based on new data from those win times. So we will then do kind of a new exit ticket after win time to see if those kids that needed to show growth are showing growth, if those kids that are needing extension are showing growth in those extended areas, and then we will also go over our post-test data.
This is just a planning sheet that we use to sit down and think about where our students are after each of those exit tickets are given. We kind of pull out those really important standards that we want to hit and kind of see where the kids line up, and we take those based off of where everyone needs to form 3 different groups. Sometimes we have 2 extension groups because everyone really understands the concept, and so we have 2 groups that need a lot more of extension and enrichment, and then we just have 1 group that needs some Just a little bit more of reteaching. And then we also keep track of kids who are absent, who might need to go in that reteaching group because they weren't there, and then kids that just need some extra help in those areas. But it changes based off of every exit ticket we do.
This happens like during their math block, so if there's 60 minutes or more that they do this with, they're usually teaching a math lesson, but on wind day, the kids are very excited, and they just kind of do it a little bit different than teaching math. They all mix and go into different teachers' classrooms, which is also really fun.
So, like you said, during the actual WIC time, sometimes it happens once a week, sometimes it's even twice a week, depending on where we are with the lesson. So it's super fluid depending on where we're noticing strengths and weaknesses and where those priority standards fall. Data is huge, like Catherine just mentioned with the table that you just saw. It drives everything about it. So typically, like mentioned, we have an extension group, a group that's above level that needs to be extended. Then we have an on-level group who really just needs more practice, needs more confidence in that particular area. Then we have a developing group that maybe needs a concept, like they need some previous lessons taught to feel confident, or sometimes it's just, hey, I'm gonna hear it from a different teacher and maybe it's going to click. I do a lot of partner group in my classroom, and in one of my partnerships just the other day, I heard them be like, one of the students be like, well, Mrs. Lipsky said, as they were explaining it to their partner. And so sometimes I think just hearing it a slightly different way can make a big difference on the kids. So sometimes they're by level, sometimes it's a concept. So we'll notice that a particular group of students is really struggling with one particular standard, or another group has that one, but they're missing a different one. So sometimes it's like below level, on level, above level, but sometimes it's based on a concept as well. We've had a lot of fun with them, and so sometimes the actual lesson looks like a craft or like a project for the kids. So in the picture there you see, when we were doing area, our extension group got to design their dream house and find the area of each of their rooms and coming back. Sometime, just the other day we did a donut. So the kids took a donut and they had to split it, and then each section of the donut had to be different, and they had to tell me what section of the donut belonged to which group. For fractions, thank you. We've done like task cards where the kids walk around. Like Olivia mentioned, a lot of times the stuff will come right out of our curriculum. Other times it's extension or fun things that we've found or done in the past. Like I said, being 3 classrooms, the different teaching methods, different strategies, I think we all have different strengths and weaknesses, so those kids going from room to room can really see different things. Another thing that's really cool is it changes every time. So it's not like I always have the developing group. So the kids are like, oh, I'm in Mrs. Siebert's class. Like I didn't get this concept. They really have no idea. So the groups change each time, and it's interesting to see, not a lot of times does one particular student stay in one group every single switch. So I think the kids don't even recognize it. In fact, just last time we did an exit ticket, my kids I started passing them out, and one of my students was like, yes, we're gonna do win time. And so I think there's just like some excitement about it too, like a switch and things like that. So the students are very engaged. And it has also made all of the kids like our kids. It's even fun just recess duty wise, like knowing a kid's name or having them come up and tell you something that they're excited about, because they really see all 3 of us as teachers, not just one.
And then I just wanted to show you our data, because it is a huge part that drives all of our decision making that we're doing for our average. So overall, we can see, like, unit 3, like that was a great unit showing lots of growth. So kids didn't really know much when they came into it, but the time they came out of it, they really got the concept. A couple other units, like unit 4, there wasn't a ton of growth, but a lot more students came in already knowing a lot. Their pre-test scores were a lot higher, so there wasn't a ton of growth because they already knew a lot. So that was one of our units where we had a lot more of extension and enrichment groups versus the reteaching. So it's just really good for us to be able to go back and see for each of our classes where we hit really well, what we need to maybe go back and do some more work with the kids. And we can individually look at each one to see, okay, they need to go back and hit some more concepts from unit 5 or from unit 7. So this is just something that we're going to keep track of all year long and hopefully see lots of good growth like we're already seeing.
Yeah, and keeping this really just lets us see that it's working, and if it's not, like, what can we change to make it better? So this is like real-time data, which we've never really had before. I mean, we take Acadians and map, but we don't have like a lot of real-time data, so this is really nice. I think it makes it a much more effective.
Yeah, and then like we said too before, We do our pre-tests, and then at the end, we do our post-tests. And a lot of times, our pre-tests and post-tests, they're obviously the same test, because we wanna see how much they grew, but they have, like multiple choice questions on it. So we've told the kids, we've trained them that if it's multiple choice, you have to show some work for it, or just leave it blank, because obviously you could guess and guess right, and you wouldn't know how much you really knew. So, we've had to do some training and talking about that. All of our exit tickets, we do that, like they each get 2 to 3, depending on how many lessons we taught before our next win time. And we let the kids see them, they get lots of feedback very frequently, so I feel like they all know how much they're growing as students in math, and I feel like we see that in our classrooms too. Overall, they feel more confident when it comes to test time, because they've had so much extra work and practice with the concepts that they really need, or extension in the areas, and so they're not just sitting there bored hearing the same thing again that they don't really need to hear. So it's been really fun.
It's fun to see it, like a student who's typically developing to go into that developing group and be a leader. Sometimes those students who struggle a little bit more, it takes them a little bit longer to get a concept, don't get to be that leader or that person who knows what they're doing, and so it's fun to see those kids kind of shine in a different light.
But in just like, this is just an experiment this year, they continue to check and change and build our toolbox, but we're hoping to extend it. It'd be nice to really extend it throughout the building if we can find those uninterrupted blocks of teaching time. We have a math curriculum that everyone teaches, so that seemed like the easiest place to start. Reading, everyone's teaching something different, so it's very hard to do this when you're not teaching the same curriculum. Now, we will eventually have a new curriculum, and so we're hoping to spread that. Because I do think, like I said, we all differentiate all the time, but this is just the most effective differentiation in my opinion. So, and we'll just continue to build toolbox. Like I said, they continue to change and adapt and know what works and what doesn't. I have some pictures here, of just some recent projects, and like I said, a lot of the times it's still work, but it's more fun. Like right now, it's kind of thematic. These are heart fractions. They're showing different fractions that are equivalent. And then the one in the bottom with the paper, that's the donut one where they're designing their own donut fraction. So, I mean, it's the same lesson that they're getting, but it's in a fun, engaging, thematic, sometime way, and the kids just think it's so cool. So, that was just one of the recent win times I got some of those pictures. So, just really good for all kids. And that's really all we have. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for us or. All right, well,
Thank you. So, our next agenda item is action items, and the first one is the adoption of the K-5 English Language Arts curriculum. And the recommendation is the Board of Education approve the purchase of open court reading totaling $486,876.71 as recommended. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Patrick? And support? Okay, thank you. Jim supports. All right, discussion.
So we did have some discussion at the January workshop about this. So Dan, is there any additional comments that you have?
Yeah, so you were sent the quote from the other vendor, which was the other product that we piloted through Amplify called CKLA. That particular quote is for 5 total years for, I think it was $558,000, so it actually ended up being more expensive than the open court quote. And one other thing to note about that particular quote through open court is it's actually for 6 years as opposed to 5 years. Molly and I in particular worked together with that representative to really go through that quote. Molly did a lot of the legwork in terms of talking to each pilot teacher and each of those line item things that you see to really make sure that's what they needed, that's what they used. We even got into the quantities of certain things to really, from a teacher's perspective, understand what it was that they were using and what worked for them. So a big thank you really to all 18 of our pilot teachers, 9 piloted CKLA and 9 piloted open court as we talked about at the workshop. But it was an extensive process that started last spring and again has gone through the pilot teams as well as curriculum council and is now to you. And I would just lastly say that remember with that cost, we did apply for it and receive a grant through the state, which would pay for all but about $23,000 of that amount. So about $23,000, thank you, Sonia, comes from general fund, but the rest of it comes from that grant.
And I just want to add, just, based off of the comment that we had too, I'll have to review the, and I don't know that we would have a comment on the corporate structure of McGraw-Hill and some of the things that we do have in place. But I do want to note, just like we're at a place where the language that we use sometimes becomes problematic when we talk about diversity and what that means and how that applies to different situations. But it is important that we find materials where students who leave us and go other places see other cultures and are able to be successful in other cultures. Students who are minority students may see themselves represented in the text and in the curriculum. There may be students who are learning English. It may not be their original language that they learn. There may be students who have disabilities or learn in other ways. And so it is important that students have access to this curriculum and access to those things. And so these things take time and to sort out just, like we're going through a political moment, we're going through a cultural moment right now. And if there are going to be changes that we make to these things based on that, it's going to be with careful review, careful study, and make sure that we adopt these things thoughtfully and carefully in respect to that. We talked about this at the workshop too, that this is in response to Michigan's Science of Reading bill and the grant that goes along with that. So just wanted to add that comment.
Any other comments?
I have a couple of questions. So because it's 6 years and you have the quantities in there, how does that work with purchasing materials? Do you adjust each year based on our enrollment? How does that, because I'm assuming we pay it all up front to utilize that grant, then do we just kind of draw off that amount as time goes by?
That's probably a combination of the two of us, but we will pay it all up front, and one of the stipulations of the grant is we use that grant money and receive all the materials by September of 2025, by the end of September 2025. So that's the plan. That said, some of the consumables are based on this year's class sizes, and so it could be in future years that we may have to make some adjustments. If one grade level is a little higher, one grade level is a little lower. But all of that is paid for up front, and then the materials for 25, 26, everything would be shipped, and then a few of those consumables would be auto-shipped on a yearly basis. That amount also includes use of the online platform that they offer in those licenses.
So we're kind of locked in, but if we needed extra copies, we could get them, but we might
Yeah,
have purchased some we
it
don't
would
need.
probably come through the curriculum budget or a different budget at that point, as opposed to the grant.
Any other discussion?
Just a couple of things, I think just to piggyback on for people who aren't at our workshop or whatever, I think it was powerful for me to see Mr. Vandermeulen shared the results from the pilot team getting together and evaluating the materials. And overwhelmingly, whether they were people who were in the pilot program for this or the pilot program for the other program, it was large margins throughout that said, no, this McGraw-Hill product is better pretty much throughout, and some by very large margins. That there was really no place where the other product seemed to rank better than this. And as was also said, and as Mr. Vandermeulen alluded to, or Mr. Fowler alluded to, our curriculum needs to meet the state standards requiring, or the state law requiring the science of reading standard, which our current materials do not, or would not, going forward, in all ways. And so, you know, we have these rules we have to follow, these rules we have to follow, these rules we have to follow, which seems to be an ever-changing maze for us here in the school world. But this does map very closely to what the state of Michigan has asked us to work toward in terms of the science of reading, which is very research-based also, and you know, it's not just something the state of Michigan made up, it's good stuff. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Then I will call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting the K-5 English Language Arts curriculum as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our action items is the security cameras. I need a motion to, let me find my sheet here, to purchase new security cameras from, okay, so the Board of Education, the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve Hillard Electric totaling $25,926 plus the authority to add on additional cameras during the project to replace aging cameras using the unit prices included in the RFP as recommended. Do I have a motion? Or do I have a, yeah, do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Okay, Jared, and do I have a support?
I'll support.
All right, discussion.
A couple comments. One, just that the funding for the security cameras are from the security grant from the state of Michigan. The other thing, just want to shout out some appreciation to the vendors who bid on this project. We've got some local companies that we have a great relationship with in a lot of areas at the school, and one that is new to us, so that's good to see some new bidders and just to see that interest in our project as well. So it's good to see the interest from our vendors in these projects.
Something too we looked at in detail.
We did talk
all
about
the
this at
specs
the
and
workshop.
things at the workshop
Yeah.
about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is district-wide, correct?
These are specific for the high
Oh,
school.
specific to the high school, okay.
We are using security grant funding for this project, and we're also requesting, as you noted, authority to add on additional cameras. We know that some of our cameras are aging, and so as we go through this process, we'll be able to add on unit by unit the amount that we actually need, without having to go out for bid again, and without running afoul of the procurement laws. So this kind of covers us in a lot of different ways. But this project specifically that they bid on is for new cameras, external and interior cameras at the high school.
What's the number of cameras?
Good question. There's 2 exterior and 3 interior, I believe.
Any more discussion? Then let's have a vote. All in favor of adopting the security cameras, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on the agenda, information, human resources update.
Yeah, so I've talked about it the last few meetings about the applicant tracking, and due to the volume of use, when I went back and ran data on how many professional jobs we currently post through Frontline, and the renewal cost being the same, we're going to stay with Frontline and then build our own platform, requiring different items that we look for the most. And I'm going to work with building principals and also directors to find out what are we really looking at when those resumes and cover letters come in. What do we need out of the application, and how do we increase those pools. Prior to spring break, we'll start posting some of the professional positions, some of the support staff, drivers. Those positions are kind of year-round, always posting. Generally with those, I'm not using the applicant tracking system because usually social media works much faster, like our LinkedIn, Facebook page, MASSP, things like that. Indeed, we're able to bring support staff in. But for the professional staff, we're going to continue with Frontline and then just build that platform that best suits Lowell area schools. The ISD currently covered the platform costs to the end of June. So in May, we'll pick that up at a prorated rate and we'll run them side by side. Similar, when we switched over to Skyward, just in school finance, running it side by side to make sure everything's clean, but at a much smaller level than Skyward, of course. And like I said, the nice thing, the volume of use and the renewal cost being the same as it's been for the past 8-9 years was a big part in that decision. So I wanted to catch you up to speed on that. Secondly, we started our tech trainers in each building. Last Monday was their first day. If you recall when we were talking about that, that is a job that is in our appendix of the LEA contract. So we're utilizing them across the district based on number of students in each building. So every elementary has one tech trainer, the middle school and the high school have 2, and they're working with curriculum in the tech department to really fine tune what they're doing daily to help staff, how they're helping the tech department, how they're helping curriculum and so forth. So that description, while maybe a little more broad on the front end, I worked with Jason and everything that he thought, Wasik, everything he thought should be a part of the description. And then we're adding as we go along just to see what's needed in the buildings. Working with the principals, and curriculum has taken on those meetings. So I posted the jobs. We're able to get the stipends out to the employees based on the contract, and then Dan jumped in and began working with Julie and Jason and building principals and the tech trainers to fine tune that. And then lastly, just with the buildings, just kind of a kudos, pickups, drop-offs, busy time of the year, bad weather, darkness, can be really tough, but our staff does a really good job. The principals have a great setup, and things are going very smooth, and we'll continue, and just working on getting kids into the building off of buses can be a tough task, and I don't know if we give enough credit where it's deserved. So I just wanted to mention that tonight, and it starts with our building principals and getting the people in place, and it's much appreciated. That's all I have, unless there's questions for me.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Budget update, Mrs. Hodge.
Great, so as we talked about at the workshop, the governor released her budget proposal last week. Overall, it appears to be a favorable budget proposal for our district, so that's definitely positive. Of course, we'll wait to hear how the House and Senate propose their budgets, and then how the consensus comes together sometime in the summer. The foundation allowance increase proposal is to bring the foundation allowance to $10,000 per pupil. Right now it's $96.08, so that's a $392 per pupil increase, which is pretty healthy, especially considering we didn't have one at all this year, so that's really nice to see. That works out to be a 4.1% increase. And then with our slight bump in student enrollment this year, that would be $1.36 million for Lowell. We're seeing a similar percentage increase to at-risk, which is a grant that we use for additional parapros to help with math and reading instruction, as well as some other positions, but that's the primary purpose that we use it for. So another 4% increase to that amount, and so that is about $46,000, which would comfortably cover cost increases for those salaries. We're looking at similar levels for our mental health and security funding that we have this year. So that's definitely a positive. That's just under $400,000, and we expect that to continue at the same level next year if these were to pass. In this budget proposal, we do see that elimination of the extra retirement funding that we're getting this year. We've got that large chunk of money to offset part of the retirement rate. And as we talked about, that's just a one-time thing. That'll go away next year. And in exchange, our cost will go down a little bit. On the flip side of that though, the cost will actually go up a little bit after it goes down. So we will still see a net decrease in our retirement rate, but it's not gonna be the 5.75% that had been discussed. And part of that is that the 3% that some employees pay in order to have health insurance when they retire, employees are not gonna be paying that next year, but as we talked about, the district is now going to be picking up part of that. So in my illustration in the fall, I estimated about a 2% increase in the retirement rate. The nominal rate is going up 2.5%, but again, not all of our staff have that on their plan, so I still think the 2% is probably a comfortable number to plan on for next year until we know exactly what will happen. Some of those retirement dollars that come in and then we immediately pay it right back out, those are gonna fluctuate a little bit, and so they will not have an impact to the bottom line. But of course, we would see our revenues go up or down, and then the expenditures would also go up or down the same amount. So I think the bottom line is we're seeing positive foundation allowance proposal, but the retirement is going to have a lot of moving parts in lots of different directions. So it'll just be something that we'll have to map out and make sure that we're capturing all of it to get a clear picture of how we could be impacted. So more to come on that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Now we have the curriculum update.
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to thank Molly and the third grade team for their report tonight. Over recent time, we've been talking a lot about learning communities and collaboration with teacher teams, and the time we set aside for teams to meet at the workshop. We had some discussion about thinking about different options over time, our current system, what's the best system, looking at other districts, considering options. What we do know is when we bring together professional learning teams and the adults with structure, with some expectations, with some guidance, then that benefits our student learning. So our learning increases when the adults are as efficient as what you heard tonight. Molly mentioned differentiation, and yeah, all teachers do differentiate, and that's not a new word, but as you probably know, for one teacher to successfully meet the needs of every single student, every single day, in every single class is not hard, it's impossible. But when you work as a team and you do some of these kinds of things that you heard tonight, the chances of students succeeding really increase. So it's academically driven, and it's driven through desire to increase learning. So I really appreciate that, as well as other examples going on through the district. We've heard a lot about flex time. That's the high school's version of what do we do for students that struggle? What do we do for students that need enrichment? And what you're seeing are examples of experimentation happening throughout the district based on these concepts. So I feel like I wanted to tie that together. And lastly for me, this Friday we have a half day for professional development. So for all the K-5 staff, they're going to be working on, thanks to you, learning about open core reading and also learning about science of reading in general. So all certified elementary staff will come together actually at the middle school auditorium at 1 o'clock on Friday for science of reading training, but then start to get into open core reading specifically in the afternoon. I know the middle school is going to be spending time as a full staff for much of the afternoon, focusing on management and behavior strategies. And then also at the high school, they're going to be spending time, I think, mainly working as a department on curriculum maps and essential standards and common assessments. So we have a lot of the same language going on right now, pre-K through 12. And so That's happening Friday afternoon. And Dustin mentioned the tech trainers. We did have our first meeting after those people were put into place, so thanks to HR for making that happen. And then Julie and I and Jason and Steve's a part of that, Craig's a part of that, also met with those teachers this past week to help them better understand the Novell migration that you've heard about to Google, as well as kind of their role in this process in terms of problem solving and so forth. So we're going to be meeting about every 2 weeks for now, and hopefully they can help us be part of the solution.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, public comments.
We have one tonight, Kim Lum.
Hi, I'm Kim Lum, 4129 Causeway Drive, Lowell. I brought you a word, Jen Doherty. It's relationships. I was reading something recently and it talked about the idea that schools are a place where we deliver academics to the people that come before us. I want to talk about that. I think first, before a child or an adult or whoever's learning from whoever's teaching in your home or wherever, you have to have a relationship. That relationship requires time. It requires reflective comments to our learners where all of us are listening to one another. It helps a teacher understand where the learners are coming from. It helps the learners understand what the teacher is looking towards and what they're about. I used to go to soccer games. They were my own kids too, but my students. Today I went to, what is it called? Competitive cheer at the high school before this meeting. Certainly not in my ballpark. I've gone to theater, I've gone to baptisms, I've gone to all kinds of events for kids from way back till today. Building relationships, listening. Today is the 40th anniversary of a kid I had in second grade, so 32 years ago. This young man lives in heaven. He's lived in heaven since 2003 because of a tragic accident that overcame him. But I think about him often, and I wonder, what would he do if he was here? But more than that, what has he done that keeps us thinking about him? 2 weeks ago, I received a message from a staff member to call because that person wanted to share something with me. A person that went to Lowell School passed away a couple weeks ago. This person has not graduated yet. And the principal at one of our schools wanted to make sure that all of that students' elementary teachers knew about this. That's what relationships are about. They're about caring. Because if the people that are delivering the academics don't have a relationship with the learners, and it doesn't mean that you know everything about them by any means, but that you care, there are many children that will not be learning anything. Today I was at the Historical Museum with a lovely group of third graders, and I saw some cues that there might be a need for some different ways of delivering the lesson, and I happily did that. They came to learn and to be curious, and I hope that some of their curiosity got fed. But more than that, I hope they felt that we listened and that we welcomed them to learn with us. It is all about relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. First thing I want to mention, just a couple mentionables regarding some money. We got a rebate check from our architect for $75,000 for the middle school project and energy efficient systems that went into that. So it included the heating and cooling system, the lighting systems, just how the building envelope was built. to be able to run that as energy as efficient, save as much energy as possible when we do that. The savings on that benefits the general fund when we're not paying that money into for utilities. And just appreciate that $75,000, and that will be placed back into the bond account for more capital improvements as well. Also received a thank you note from Gilda's Club for a check from Pink Arrow. So this is more to the community, but just through that effort and through the volunteers that do that project, there was a $50,000 donation that was made on behalf of Pink Arrow, and those services that Gilda's Club provides to our community continue with some more. So thank you for that. As you saw tonight, as you tried to find parking, there are a lot of activities going on right now. So we're hosting gymnastics tonight. Connor touched on this too. This is kind of a sweet spot of the year for academics. Daylight is extending in our days, which is always great, but it's also a time for learning, and so we're seeing lots of academic gains. We're closing in on the end of the second trimester, so some of those final projects and getting ready to gear up for exam review, and then all of the other activities that take place too. So we've got our music programs that are getting ready for the festival. It's musical season as well, so the cast and crew getting ready to put on a great production of Willy Wonka next month, and then the state tournaments for our winter sports and conference tournaments and end of conference play. That's all happening right now. So just a lot of activity happening in the schools, and it's really exciting. A comment on Mrs. Boone's comment from earlier as well. There were a couple other things for there. I would just reiterate that we do have a library process in place, and if there are changes, again, like with my previous comment, those processes may change, but we have a process in place, and we'll continue to follow those processes. And that other document related to transgender students, that's an internal document that we use. We've talked a lot when we talk about these issues about the importance of good communication between school and families. And so this is a tool that we use to have those conversations. So it does talk about bathrooms, and it does talk about extracurriculars, and we talk about what that's going to look like for those students in school. And so, there's been a lot of activity in Washington over the last 3 weeks in President Trump orders. I think they are going to have an impact on schools. Congress is going to be working on legislation as well that may have impact on the laws, on the federal budget. We're going to listen to Governor Whitmer's State of the State at the end of this month. The state legislature is working on the School Aid Act after that, and working on different things that affect schools. All of these actions have an impact on school. And we'll be looking at policies, later this spring to talk about how some of these changes that were made last year are going to impact us in the schools. These things take time, and so we'll continue to be thoughtful, we'll continue to be deliberate, and most of all, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to focus on just doing our jobs every day, which is showing up and providing great educational opportunities for our kids. And so that's what we do, that's what we're good at, and that's what we're going to continue to do every day. So we'll continue to talk about some of these things, as things change politically, but the education piece, we're just going to keep doing that. Finally, in closing, our February workshop is going to be at the Lowell High School Library. Just see how that change or how that space has evolved and how students are using that. So just would like to invite the public, if you'd like to come to our workshop. It's not going to be in this room as typical. It will be in the downstairs in the basement of the high school and in the library. Parking should be better.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Much more.
That's all.
Thank you. Board communications, Jared?
I got it.
Okay. Patrick?
Just want to think Mrs. Lum's comment, it reminded me of 30 years ago at the school I work at. We had an administrator who said, and talked all the time about the 4 R's of education: reading, writing, arithmetic, and relationships. And as a 32-year teacher, it is important. Every teacher knows that you're not successful without them. And it's hard to run a school, it's hard to manage a school as administrators. It helps your discipline a whole lot in your school, the better relationships that you have and build, and that's so important that teachers sort of know that in by who they are or whatever, but we also have to be very deliberate about it, and we have a goal in our strategic plan that students feel those relationships and demonstrate that those relationships are real to them in our schools, and we need to be able to prove that, because it's so, you can't separate it from the reading, writing, and arithmetic that go with those other R's. So thanks for that.
I would just like to reiterate what Nate said. I mean, our job as a school board is to make sure kids are educated and ready for life after high school. We deal with whatever regulations come our way and still do our best. So even though things are up in the air, none of us claim to be constitutional scholars, and more importantly, we don't try to be. We go with what's guidance, what we need to do, and please know that just because we don't show up to every fight that's put in front of us, we're doing our jobs. We care about getting kids educated and getting them out of here to be successful.
I would just like to kind of piggyback on what has been said tonight as far as relationships and stuff go. And I did spend 29 years in the classroom at Lowell High School. We just adopted a 6-year reading program. So this administration will be in office for 4 years. So we still have 2 years beyond that. And the goal, as everyone has stated, and I kind of don't understand why we have to keep saying this, but is the overall picture of educating every student that walks through our door, regardless if of their special needs, regardless if they're a second language, they're not English language speaking students, regardless if, whatever they have going on, it is our job and our responsibility by law to educate them. So thank you for the support, thank you for the hard work on everything that is, has gone into our adopting this curriculum. Molly, thank you for your efforts as well, and the efforts of the people at Murray Lake. We have an outstanding staff, we have an outstanding school board, and we're doing our best for your kids. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, so I'm assuming that Jessica's going to move it. You're going to second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8:56? 7. English major, you do the math. Thank you. Hold this out there. Do I have to wrap this? I'm sorry. Make it official.
Right.
All right.
Oh, gosh. Don't turn that off. I gotta figure out why.